At the beginning of World War I, my family immigrated to the US for the first time. My great-grandmother, Catherine, left the Caribbean with her then 4 kids to stay with her sister in Indiana, while my great-grandfather was off fighting in France, a captain in the Royal Canadian Medical Corps. Her sister was married to an American, and she no doubt wished for some company and support while great-grandpa was overseas. My black family was not impressed with Indiana. My grandfather died in 1983, but before he did, he wrote of that time, of how, as a bright and friendly 7-year-old, he was subject to unfair and unloving attention by classmates and nuns alike. Jibes about his skin color, unfair scrutiny of his schoolwork. Great-grandma, known as Mumsy in the family until her death, booked the first boat back to the Caribbean as soon as armistice was signed. Of this time, Grandpa wrote, "I was 7 at the time, and remember seeing the Statue of Liberty fade away as we turned our back on it, even as it had turned its back on us. At the time, I could not appreciate the irony. My mother, no doubt, could. Here she was fleeing America because its laws and customs made it a place where she did not want to raise her kids. Better than I could she sardonically wave goodbye to the loudly proclaimed symbol of America's fraternity, equality, and opportunity as, with her brood, she fled the unfriendly shores." Pretty good writer, wasn't he? Now, my grandfather did come back to the States as a young man, where he promptly met and married my grandmother, a recent immigrant from Costa Rica. My West Indian family, though, knows that the promise of this country has yet to be lived into. It's why we immigrated twice. And in this past week, folks, once again, we've seen what happens when we let certain voices tell us that our differences are weaknesses. That being a darker color or speaking a different language disqualifies us from being American. That real Americans watch real halftime shows in English. Friends, when we allow these voices to persuade us, we all lose out. You know this. We miss the beauty. And yes, I am speaking of Bad Bunny's halftime show, which was which was a gorgeous tribute to Puerto Rico, the Caribbean, and to love. And as someone with an entire side of the family who immigrated from various Caribbean nations, I and so many others were so filled with pride. Now, is this the most pressing thing on our national agenda? No. We need to keep top of mind that ICE raids are still happening, trans folks are still being attacked, unhoused people are still being criminalized, people are still losing health insurance. But I do want you to understand what it meant for those from Puerto Rico, from the Caribbean, what that show meant to us. How many people watched it? Okay, most of you. It was beautiful. It was a proud, rich celebration of history and culture, a celebration of the beauty and the richness of Borinqueño and island life. And at the end, Bad Bunny spiked a football inscribed with the words, "Together we are America." The message couldn't have been clearer. And it fell on so many ears that did not want to hear it. that insisted an American halftime show should be rendered in English, that Puerto Rican culture and history are not American culture and history, that to not speak and look as they do is an attack on our country. And friends, the truth is that that same message has been repeated in our denomination as well. We heard earlier a little bit about Frances Ellen Watkins Harper. Frances herself was born as a black woman in 1825 to a life of relative privilege. She was born free. Her mother died when she was 3, which was a large grief in her early life. But her uncle, Reverend William Watkins, who was an AME minister and founder of the Watkins Academy for Negro Youth, and an abolitionist, he took her in. And she enjoyed the benefits of that education up until she was 13 and required to go to work as a seamstress and a nursemaid for a white family that owned a bookshop. Indeed, I see many eyes lighting up at the mention of working at a bookshop. Though she stopped attending school, she used her spare time to read from the books in the shop and work on her own writing. And so, as a civil rights activist and abolitionist, Reverend Watkins was a major influence on his niece's life and work. She published her first piece of anti-slavery, her first anti-slavery piece in a journal at age 14. So she used her writings to educate white folks about slavery and its effects. And while she was doing this, she maintained religious affiliations in 2 very different religious traditions. On the one hand, she was a member of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. On the other hand, she was a Unitarian. And it's recorded that she was a member of the Unitarian Church on Chestnut Street in Pennsylvania from 1870 until her death in 1911. For reasons still unknown, she never really, that we know of, wrote about or documented her relationship with Unitarianism, more's the pity. But her public activism continued in later years. In 1891, she delivered a speech to the National Council of Women of America in Washington, D.C., demanding justice and equal protection by the law for the African American people. In this speech, she said, "As long as there are such cases as moral irresponsibility, as long as Potiphar's wife stands in the world's pillory of shame, no man should be deprived of life or liberty without due process of law. A government which has power to tax a man in peace and draft him in war should have power to defend his life in the hour of peril. A government which can protect and defend its citizens from wrong and outrage and does not is vicious. A government which would do it and cannot is weak. And where human life is insecure through either weakness or viciousness in the administration of law, there must be a lack of justice. And where this is wanting, nothing can make up the deficiency." I don't know. Sounds to me like she could have written that last week. Now, for years, decades, we Unitarian Universalists as a whole didn't know much about Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, or about Ethelred Brown, the Jamaican founder of the Harlem Community Church, in a Unitarian church for black folks in the early 20th century, or about Joseph Jordan's Universalist church and school for black folks in Suffolk, Virginia, or about the contributions of countless other black and brown UUs that went unremarked and forgotten, sometimes lost to the sands of time, but just as often consciously buried because admitting that our faith was and is suitable and accessible to people of color was just a step too far for some of our leadership. It wasn't until the 90s that Reverend Mark Morrison Reed, a black UU minister raised in our faith and a historian, began uncovering the stories of these Black Unitarians, Universalists, and Unitarian Universalists, and bringing them back into our consciousness as UUs. You can read more about them, if you like, in his book, Darkening the Doorways. The truth is, we also, as a denomination from our leadership down, have a history of discounting the lives, experiences, and voices of people of color, and of queer people, and of disabled people. Last week, Reverend Wendy encouraged us to take the risk of becoming a people. She urged us to take the risk of meeting people's needs. And that's what Frances did. She spent her entire adult life traveling, speaking, and telling truth to power. And while she was not exactly a lady of leisure, she could have earned an okay living as a housekeeper. It's not what she chose. She used her relative privilege to spread the word about slavery, a condition she herself was never bound to. Frances kept one foot firmly in her Black community as part of the AME Church for her own mental health and for her own self-care. But she kept the other in the more dominant culture, in a world of abolitionists and activists that was still very white, where she was sometimes the only Black voice and often the only Black woman. But as a Unitarian, Frances took to heart the theology that she herself and her Black siblings were just as much sparks of the divine presence as any white Bostonian. That she had the divine right and the duty to proclaim her humanity and her personhood in a time when even white abolitionists held that Black folks were mentally and socially inferior. See, friends, we have always had this wisdom among us. We've always contained the experiences and the strategies and the knowledge and the theological threads that we need to resist current political trends. And as a people, we have always, as UUs, contained multitudes, if we took the time to see it. It took us a long time as a denomination to see it. Our job this time is not to forget it. Our job in this time is to listen. I love you. I love you. I love you. You are worthy. I love you. That is the basis of our faith, folks. I love you. I see you, your needs, your safety, your agency, your being. We need you to survive. Friends, Reverend Jakarin is a friend of mine, both loving and practical. I'd expect exactly that response from her. Her prayer wasn't just an affirmation of love in the face of hate, though it was absolutely that. But more than that, it was a statement of theological truth. It was a statement about what lies at the heart of our faith, without which we have no reason for being a faith community. The statement that each and every one of our beloveds is valid and necessary to who we are. That we literally cease to be as a community when we attempt to cut the connections between us based on discrimination and fear. That we can only be us when we take the uncomfortable step of listening to and affirming experiences outside of our own. This was, by the way, the same General Assembly where we approved the new UUA values, the ones with love at the center. I love you. I love you. I see you. I love you. This has to be our response each and every time we see someone attacked for being trans, or targeted by ICE for speaking Spanish, or pulled over for driving while black. I love you. I love you. I am not me without you. We are not us without you. We love you. And this is the direction we're choosing to go as a denomination now. Our newly defined values, justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, generosity, inclusion, all with love at the center. They're a recognition that we've not always gotten it right as a denomination or as a nation, and that we became, for a time, poorer as a people, lived less into our values for not valuing the voices of the less powerful. But it's also a recognition of how we move forward better. How we support and amplify and include all voices, not just the ones with institutional and economic power. And also, you might recall that a few weeks ago, Reverend Sophia, also of Caribbean descent, and a bunch of other clergy went and got arrested in Washington, D.C. to protest against ICE. That is what our leader is doing in this time. And the Mountaintop, our special plate today, is also an organization that is doing that work. So is Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism, or BLUE. So is Diverse Revolutionary UU Multicultural Ministries, which is the big organization for UUs of color. And I'm wearing my shirt today. And organizations like Trust for trans religious UU professionals, Equal Access for accessibility and disability rights. And so in looking forward to our future as a UU people, we are trying to avoid the mistakes of the past. We're trying to bring all of our people with us. Friends, Reverend Jakaran has given us a blueprint for pushing back against the forces of exclusion. It is an unequivocal no to the forces of division by saying yes to love, to inclusion, to equity, giving people what they need in order to be fully recognized, full members of us. And so may our continued response to aggression, to the forces trying to divide us by race and nationality, be the same. And may we show it by our actions. We love you. We love you. We love you. You belong here. You belong with us. We love you. May it be so.